Hello and welcome everyone, Slothcakes here to another episode of Amphibious Analysis, where I go through the various amphibious mobile suits of the Gundam universes and go through their history, lore, weapons, and other interesting things. Now today we're going to be looking at some Amphibious Zakus, 4 specifically. However, after writing the script, I realized this would be too long to push into one video where I wouldn't be able to cover everything I wanted, so I split it in half. And it would just be a really messy video because I'm trying to cram in so much information. It would just be a mess, so that's why I did it like this. Part 2 will be out shortly after. If it's already out, just click on the card in the top right. And this video, we're going to be covering the Amphibious Zakus of the 1 Year War. Starting with the first, not only out the bunch, but of its kind, the MS-06M Zaku Marine type was not just Zeon's first attempt, nor was it just Zeonic Company's first attempt, but it was Universal Century's first attempt of making a amphibious mobile suit. And you might be asking, why make one in the first place? Well, a simple reason could be that once Zeon made a presence on Earth, the simple idea of giving their navy a mobile suit that could work in water might be a pretty darn beneficial idea, since Zeon didn't have the numbers that the Federation had, so they needed every advantage they could get. And so they went to Zeonic Company, and after many attempts of throwing Zakus into bodies of water hoping they learn to swim, Zeonic Company created the MS-06M Zaku Marine type. And side by side, he still looks very similar to the Zaku 2, just with some extra shit thrown onto him. We see a different type of head, which is probably made specifically to work well in water. His iconic shoulder pads have been replaced with a much more smoother design for hydrodynamic purposes, and they don't a single spike. On his back, we see a new backpack which has hydrojet engines, which just thrusters that work underwater. These thrusters are also found throughout his arms and legs, which allows him to move underwater and move in various directions. Then finally, besides the weapons, his joints look much thicker, and that's due to having a protective waterproof seal, protecting his joints from all the problems water would cause. So being a variant of the Zaku 2, like every other variant, it's still a Zaku 2 F-type just with extra things onto him, and this may or may not cause a problem in the future. However, before we get into that, let's look at the model number. Now the Zaku Marine type is noted as MS-06M. MS-06 being the Zaku 2, specifically the Zaku 2 F-type, and the M being a Mariner since this is a Marine variant of the Zaku 2. Now if you're familiar with Zeon's amphibious mobile suits of the 1 Year War, they're noted as MSM then the number. This started because of the Marine type. At first he had the usual MS-06M because he was a variant of an existing mobile suit. But later on, Zeon decided that amphibious mobile suits were useful enough to put more research and development into them, and instead of making a marine variant of an existing mobile suit, they decided to make a mobile suit solely dedicated for marine activity, thus giving them their own model, MSM Mobile Suit Marine. And when they developed 2 more Zaku Marine types, instead of giving it the MS-06M, they gave it the MSM-01. Now before we jump into history, let's go over some numbers, and his stats are, to no surprise, extremely similar to the Zaku 2 F-type. There's nothing really noteworthy to note, but the small differences is the Marine type is taller just for having a different head. His antenna just gives him a little bit of height, coming at 18.2 meters compared to the F-type being at 17.5. And for weight, he is at max and empty weight 10 tons less compared to the F-types, being at 60 max weight and at 43.3 tons at empty, while the F-type is 73.3 at max and 58.1. And this is contributed by maybe the amphibious equipment the Marine type has is lighter compared to the F-type's equipment. Maybe the backpack's lighter, the verniers, the fuel, just the things that make him go into water compared to the things that make him go on land and space is lighter compared wise. But now for the history lesson. The Marine type was constructed at Side 3, and 5 of them were made before they were sent out during the 3rd Descent operation. This unit was given to the Sea Serpent submarine squadron for field testing off the Pacific coast of North America. And how'd they do during the testing? Not so good. The Zaku Marine type was riddled with various problems, and he did not reach a satisfactory level that Zeon wanted. From having his waterproof joints fail and malfunction, causing them to be damaged or break, having an arsenal that's underwhelming at best and gets outdated fast, which we'll cover in a second. And besides small tidbits here and there, another specific reason is, while the marine type is an amphibious mobile suit, the Zaku body, the humanoid body, is not the most hydrodynamic thing out there. There's a reason why fish look and are shaped a certain way, because it's the best way to go through water. There's a reason why submarines and future amphibious mobile suits look like that, because it's hydrodynamic and it makes it easier to go through water. The marine type's body just gets in the way. It not being specifically made to traverse the water has its problems. Water pressure or just the water current pushing on certain joints the wrong way can cause them to malfunction, break, and be destroyed, which is a thing that happens with this guy with his waterproofing joints malfunctioning and causing problems. And while I can keep going, overall, Zeon deemed this design unsatisfactory. And while 2 more marine types were made, they were given the classification as MSM01, and they were resigned to data gathering units. However, and this is a big however, this wasn't all a failure, because the data gathered from the 01 led Zeon to develop the prototype GOG and kickstart the modern amphibious mobile suits we know today. But enough of that, let's move on to my favorite segment, and that's the weapons. Let's start off with melee weapons, and the Zaku marine type has no dedicated melee weapons. But he can obviously punch and kick, and with the shoulder spike he can give someone the good old college varsity tackle. But why no heat hawk? Is it a heating problem, either the generator or the heat hawk itself? Does it cause too much weight or maybe gets in the way when swimming about? It could also just be the fact that pulling out the heat hawk, heating it up, and swinging it hard enough to it actually go through something and damage it might be too much for the Zaku to handle, or it could just be all these factors combined. Maybe the water currents pushing against the joints while he's trying to grab the heat hawk or swing it, causing damage, might just break the mobile suit and be too risky. And let's not forget, stealth is a very big advantage amphibious mobile suits have, and heating up a heat hawk underwater will give you massive heat signatures where anyone could spot you a mile away with just some basic technology, so maybe it wasn't even worth to use this. But anyways, now let's move on to his main weapon. The SUBROC Gun, or Submarine Rocket Gun, is a small compact weapon with a cylinder body and a pointed tip. Under we have a handle grip with a handle guard, and behind this we have a thin bump stock that looks collapsible. And while bump stocks are nearly all the time much higher, but for some reason this one is significantly lower behind the grip, this could be because the bump stock rests on the Zaku's skirt instead of the chest pec area. And in front of the handle, we have an additional handle grip for extra support and stability. The SUBROC is a 4-tube launcher that can be held one- or two-handed. It's said to have decent range and great destructive potential, being an explosive based weapon. However, a big downside is its low ammo count. It's gonna have a multiple of 4, but we don't know exactly how much. Also, just looking at the weapon and how it's depicted, I don't think you can manually reload this thing either on land or in water. It looks like one of those weapons they have to go back to base for it to be reloaded, so that's gonna really hinder your performance. And you're gonna see a pattern of just having not too much firepower and overall low ammo. So let's go over his next weapon, and that's head Vulcans. These are Vulcans located in the head, great for taking out smaller vehicles, infantry, or incoming missiles, well in this case it would be torpedoes. They're good support and defensive weapons. However, against mobile suits, unless you're hitting key weak spots, most mobile suits have armor thick enough to render the head Vulcans useless. And yes, I go over head Vulcans a lot on this channel. They're very helpful tools, and there's a reason why so many mobile suits use them. And those are his base weapons. However, he does have one optional weapon, and that's the 4-tube 240mm rocket pods. The weapon's pretty simple. You can have it on the left or right side of the chest, or you can have 2 of them if you really want. They fire simple rockets and they're pointed straight up. The reason they're pointed up is this is primarily used for cruise mode. The Marine type swims or goes into cruise mode head first, and while sometimes getting out his hands to use his SUBROC gun might be hard with the currents pushing it out, this allows him to swim towards something and shoot it, and if he has more of them, it just gives him more ammo. It's a very simple weapon, and it just allows him to actually fight while in cruise mode, so he doesn't have to leave cruise mode, shoot, then go back into cruise mode. So as a whole, he does have firepower, but he has very low ammo on everything, and it's mostly missiles, which, don't get me wrong, I love explosives, but they don't fit all occasions. And remember what I said with his weapons being outdated fast. He's the MSM-01. It takes up to the 03 for beam weapons to be common with the GOG, and just beam weapons blow this guy out the water. That pun was not intended. And while his battlefield presence was non-existent at best, he did make an impact on technology because he did help Zeon lead its way towards the modern amphibious mobile suits we know today. However, we're not done with this guy, and neither is Zeon. At one point, Zeon wanted to make variants of various mobile suits to fit very specific missions, and the Marine type, for some odd reason, was in that group. What happened is, in short, they wanted to get the MSM-01 and make a much more combat-oriented variant, having weaponry that's better adapted for aquatic combat and fix some of the problems that it had. So Zimmad Company went to work and they developed the first ever amphibious mobile suit, the MSM-02 Hydro Test Type. So first of all, the design is great. I don't know why, it's something about its roundness and smoothness. It's probably because it looks hydrodynamic that just appeals so much to me. And it's the arms and the shoulders. The shoulders just remind me of those big shoulders you find on like the Ideon, the Ava, and Space Godzilla. And something about those arms, they remind me of the Metabots characters like Metabee or Crucio, where they have these large weapon arms and little hands sticking out of them like on the underside. But anyways, the Hydro Test Type was an overall upgrade of the 01, with having some key features such as the mentioned aquatic specific weaponry, which we'll cover in a second, but also adopting the generator found on the Dom, plus having a new cooling system which utilizes seawater. This system would be later found on things like the GOG, and this lets his generator reach a higher output of 1,370 kilowatts compared to the Marine type's 951, a overall 44% increase. Nice. As for the rest of the stats, nothing too different. He is heavier due to his additional weapons and water cooling system, and just in general, he is one of those MSV mobile suits, and if you guys explore MSV, you might know what I'm talking about. He's one of those mobile suits that he has art, it shows some flavor text, his weapons, but there's not too much information about him. He doesn't really appear in really anything I know of, so we are very limited with information. But we can go over his weapons, so let's go over that. First up is the 6.2 missile launchers. Located on the top of his shoulders, these rockets are meant to be used during cruise mode. And to mention again, when the Zaku goes into cruise mode, he's going kind of head first, so his shoulders will be pointing straight forward, allowing him to hit things right in front of him. However, if he does surface out of the water, he can hit things that are above him or slightly at an angle. And that's really the main and only purpose, which seems odd, but having weapons you can use in cruise mode is a very helpful option. This allows you to stay in combat while in cruise mode, either chasing something down or going towards something. You can fire rockets at it, compared to going towards it, getting out of cruise mode, firing, then going back. It's much slower, and the stopping or slowing down could lead you open for attack. Now moving on to his arms, something that looks very similar but is very different is his 5-barrel Vulcans. One in each arms, these have a massive orange tip and house 6-barrel Vulcans, which in total gives him 12 Vulcan barrels to unleash on whatever poor soul crosses his path. God, that is a lot of barrels, Jesus. Now, info on this is scarce, but looking at the size of the barrel, they look much bigger than things like the head Vulcans and maybe the same caliber of the Zaku machine gun, meaning the bullets will do damage to a decent amount of things, and again, 12 barrels, and since we have 6 on each arm, the fire rate, we don't know, but I can safely assume that it's pretty goddamn high. And honestly, while the Gundam's armor can deflect Zaku machine gun fire, if this weapon is similar to that, it is basically 12 Zaku machine guns. I would like to see how that armor holds up. But anyways, it's just a Vulcan machine gun, very simple. Pretty cool weapon overall. Now, a reason for that round design that you find on the shoulders is so it's hydrodynamic. This allows the Hydro test type to bring his arm out while moving around and shoot so water currents won't push or fight against his arm. Now, on the subject of his arms, while he does have 5-finger manipulators, he's never depicted holding a weapon, either be a melee weapon or a ranged one, and there could be a few reasons. One could just be, and it's kind of a meta reason, is that he's an MSV mobile suit that doesn't appear in many things, so he's never got the chance to be depicted with a weapon. It could be that his weird placement of the arms makes it hard to hold traditional weapons, including the SUBROC, or that he's an amphibious mobile suit that he could hold a weapon, but if it's not an amphibious weapon, there's not really a point. And we could do things like if he holds the SUBROC weapon, it would weigh him down too much or get in the way of his other weapons. Insert reason here. Moving on to his backpack, we have the anti-air and anti-ship missile, firing large powerful missiles made for, well, it's in the name, its purpose is right there. And with its location, it can fire when in cruise mode or when under an aircraft or ship, and I assume he can use it for other things as well, but this guy has a decent amount of weapons on him already, so we can use this for its sole purpose. Since if we look at the size of the missiles and the backpack, we only see 4 slots, so he has to use these carefully. But yeah, anti-ship missiles are pretty helpful. Just means you can punch a hole in a ship so they take in water, or maybe damage it enough that they deem you a threat. And anti-air just means that any aircraft going above a body of water might get shot down, so that's pretty helpful actually. And finally, we're gonna stay on the backpack, and located on these top fin things, we have the 70mm Vulcan Pods. Simple, small caliber ballistic guns that tuck in when not in use and deploy up when readied. These are simple Vulcans, like head Vulcans, but well obviously not in the head. Now, we don't get much info, but doing some speculations, these look pretty similar to Vulcans you see in other mobile suits. However, the location does give it a downside of being stationary. Unlike head Vulcans, which follow wherever you look at, we don't know if these have a wide range of motion or how far they can move around, if at all. So at best, maybe they can just move up and down in just some easy directions, and at worst, they're stationary and only gonna shoot things in front of them. But not being in the head has its benefits. One thing is the bigger caliber. This is 70mm compared to the Gundam 60mm. Not only that, while we don't know, but with head Vulcans, you can only have so much ammo in the head because you have other shit up there. But with this, because it's in the backpack, maybe he has more storage for ammo, meaning he can fire this much more often than head Vulcans. And so that's the Aqua type's weapons. He has some heavy firepower of having a whole lot of missiles and a whole lot of Vulcans, and he does fulfill his purpose of being an amphibious combat-oriented mobile suit. But the big question is, how was he? Well, while his weapons are nice, he failed to meet Zeon's requirements for underwater activity like combat, and we could simply put that beam weapons, which are found in the next mobile suit in line, the 03 GOG, are just much stronger and effective than what he has. Just because with all the weapons he has to carry a lot of ammo, which is gonna weigh him down. And honestly, while I love the 6 Vulcan barrels, I'd just rather have a single beam gun. It just seems much more effective. But another problem he had was mobility. And while it said that he can improve his equipment, which would increase his underwater mobility by 10 to 20%, this was still not good enough. But one other problem, and a major one, was he was a fish out of water. His equipment was so dedicated to amphibious activity like his weapons and his cooling system that when he was out of water, he would receive drastic and heavy penalties. And if we compare this to the GOG, when the GOG was out of water, he was very slow. However, he had very thick armor and a beam weapon to make him a threat. But this guy, some of his weapons you can't even use on land because they shoot straight up, and he doesn't have the thick armor of a GOG, making him easy to take out. And that wraps up the Amphibious Zakus of the 1 Year War. After this, Zeon threw in the towel and decided to focus more on dedicated amphibious mobile suits and ditch the humanoid design. However, this is not the end of the humanoid design for the 1 Year War, because the Federation also took a crack at it, making things like the Aqua Gym and the Gundam Marine type. But that's for a different video. So what have we learned from the 1 Year War? Well, the Zaku's body type is not the best for amphibious purposes. It's better to make an entirely new frame so it can be as hydrodynamic as possible. And also, because you're limited to the Zaku's frame and specs, he does not utilize beam weapons, which is a common weapon for amphibious mobile suits, and he doesn't utilize a melee weapon, which again is common. This just makes him have heavy penalties that thankfully Zeon decided to just move on. And there is a depiction in Gundam Thunderbolt. There's nothing too different, he practically looks the same, we don't have that many pictures of it, but we do have a marine type with a giant cannon. And that's cool, giant shoulder cannon. Again, not that much information to go into, but I did want to show you guys. But like I said in the beginning, I split this into 2 parts. This was the 1 Year War Amphibious Zakus. In the next video, we're going to be tackling after the 1 Year War, where for some unknown reason, the Federation decided to take a crack at making the Zaku amphibious, so tune in the next episode where we learn why they wanted to do it, and if they succeeded or not. But till then, thank you for watching. If the next video is out, you can just wait till the end of the video to click the card or click the top little link thingy. But like always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Slothcakes here, and hope to see you next time.